Right. Lovely. Make yourself comfortable in your chair. So always just give a few moments to be aware of your posture and rubbing your hands together, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. And the other side. Take your time with this and see it as a sort of, almost like a kind of little tour around your body, upper part of your chest, and down to your belly. And don't feel restricted to the belly. I mean, you could go around the back and the sides a little bit. It depends whether that's so comfortable or not. And then finally your legs. Good. Now sit back, feet out, and it's just taking a few moments and sort of continuing this idea of a view of the body, if you like, and a technique that we sometimes use in arts like, particularly in things like sitting meditation, which I suppose is something that is inherent in Tai Chi, but it's the idea of a body scan. And you can do it in any order or whatever. I like to start with the feet, and you can do it in any position, you can do it at any time, really. And it's really just literally scanning through. You start with head or feet. We'll start with the feet. So start with your left foot, and then the right foot, and just gradually let your attention, like a camera, panning up through your shins to your knees, and then your thighs. You can, we're doing this quite quickly, but you can spend as much time as is appropriate for you on these stages. You feel the weight of your body in your hips. You feel your hips, your lower back, and then going up towards the shoulder blades, the front of your body, belly, chest and ribs, shoulders drop in. Your hands are just resting, and in this position they'll rest on your legs. You can just feel the weight of your arms and your hands on your legs. Again, spend in your own time. You can spend as much time as is appropriate on this. And then finally your head, and in this position your head is sort of resting on your shoulders. If you were, say, laying back, you might find that you've got aware of the weight of your head on whatever you're laying on, and so on. And just bring your feet in. Now, I went through that fairly quickly because I think in Tai Chi it's a starting point, and something that we try and maintain. That awareness of the body is something that we try and maintain all the way through. But it can be a thing in its own right. So these arts don't have to be complicated, and the body scan is often used as a way of starting a session of meditation. It can be used at night if you're restless, you can't quite get to sleep. It can be used if you're sort of busy and you can't work out which to do next, in lots of circumstances. So it's quite a good thing to practice in its own right. In Tai Chi, of course, we try and maintain this awareness the whole time, or at least we try and maintain an awareness of the awareness, so you recognize when you've lost touch with your body. But in many ways, it is the foundation for all the movements that we do. So now, once again, feeling your weight, particularly in hips and buttocks, a little bit in your legs and feet, about a third there in your feet. Supporting the upper part of your body, shoulders dropping, ribs dropping. And then just turning your head. So that awareness of your body and the awareness of correct posture and rooting down, just sitting quietly in the background. Sort of a base for your attention to rest on, and just observing what's happening in your neck, in your back, up either side of your spine. And then your shoulders. Going forwards. Down to your sides. Feeling the winding, spiraling movement from your shoulder joint down into your fingertips. And then as though you're winding up thin thread, like cotton or wool or something. Back the other way. Just take a moment as you're doing this to notice whether there's still an awareness of the feeling of a little bit of weight in your feet. Rest your hands, ease them forwards, and push back. Just before you move your weight forwards each time, take a moment just to register the feeling of your feet against the floor. Make sure they're still there. But just get into the habit of kind of making that note, and it will become quite sort of intuitive. Same thing as you go back into your hips. And then when you turn, of course, it's sort of the foot that you're moving towards and the hip that's diagonally opposite. On the other side, so in the other diagonal. and then going around. And back the other way. And then raising your heel, step forwards, push the heel down, lower the toes, push the foot into the floor. So all these details are really, one way of looking at what we're doing is just building on that basic body scan, filling in more and more detail. So again, that makes the idea of the body scan quite kind of fundamental to what we're doing. And then on the other side. Good. And hands down to your sides again. And this time it's winding movement with the transfer of your weight. So notice how we take in more and more detail until it gets to a point where we want to be just aware of everything as much as possible. Starting point is always going to be feet and hips and the weight sinking. That's always going to be the thing that will draw us back. Because we will always need that, I suspect. I certainly do. Every now and then, just this glimpse of the total movement within your body. And changing. That tends to happen when we aren't deliberately thinking about things. We have to get beyond that. One of my early teachers used to describe the basic posture as though you're standing on a hill looking out over a valley. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but sometimes if you climb up a hill, especially if it's quite a steep hill, you might get to the top quite sort of tired and out of breath. And for a few moments, you just stand there taking in the scene without any kind of thought or judgment. And then, of course, those things clip back in. And it's that sense of total awareness that we want to try and get up in and moving towards in Tai Chi. Don't get frustrated if it's only the odd glimpse. That's quite normal in my experience. This time coming over. and then drawing apart. Pigeon spreads its wings. And pushing a wave. Now punch with both fists. And then after this one, we'll go back to pigeon spreads its wings and do the little set of 3. As always, a useful way of training your attention is to do sequences of movements. Generally, what we want to try and do is give that sort of like conscious thinking something to think about that can keep it occupied. There's nothing wrong with thinking about things, but if that's all we do, then we fail to kind of take some kind of ownership of what else is going on in the mind, and it can become very dominant. So it's not a rejection of that by any means. In fact, it can be a very useful, insightful quality. One more round. This time turning your hands all the way out, and again this winding movement around. This time combined with the pressing forwards. This time changing. Notice how there's that very gentle, very subtle push down through your feet and your hips. Really just a split second before there's any sense of an upward movement, an expanding movement in the upper part of your body. A change into the wild goose. And parting the clouds. Let your hands drop all the way down. Feel your hands hanging. Feel the weight of your arms hanging from your shoulders. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Even as you're pushing one arm up, aware of the weight of your other arm. And to focus on that image of resistance, of moving through water, or whatever particular image is useful to you. And sometimes that can produce that sort of picture of a whole body in movement, because it slightly changes the way that we're moving. Do one more on each side after this one. Take your time. Remember, it's an expansion from the middle of your body. So again, we're aware of that pressure downwards through hip, leg, and foot. Same thing with this. Push in two directions. Still feel that rotation from your shoulder to your fingertips, the outward movement and on the inward movement. And this time, we'll add to that the rotation in our hips and around our spine. So that turning in the middle two movements. Do one more round of this. And then one foot out. And then grasping the tiger's ears. And on the other side. And then grasping the tiger's ears. Okay, and then your feet back. Go back to the wild goose and add to it the turning in the center of your body. Going back to the image of standing on the hill, if that hill happens to be in the middle of a landscape, it's been much easier to take in the whole landscape. So say there's, it's in the middle of a town and you want to see the whole of the town, you've only really got to turn round. Whereas if it's on the edge of the town or a little bit back, it's not going to be so easy. So increasingly that view is taken from the center part of the body. That's the part of the body that links all the parts of the body. So again, we add in more detail, but we also become a lot more specific, a lot more focused. Now this time, when you turn, so if it's your left shoulder coming forwards, you move towards your left foot and you turn towards the right foot. And then you come back to the center, and then the same thing on the other side, moving towards the right. And just to emphasize that, this time as you go into your left foot or whatever it is, raise the knee of the opposite foot as though you're going to take a step. We've done this, when we do this stepping, we pull the knee up. It's more difficult if the weight's in it, so this encourages that slight shift of the weight. And then again, as though we're taking a step, you go in, you raise the heel and then the toes. Plant the foot down. Come back to the middle, go to the opposite side, raise the heel and then the toes. Very carefully with this, don't overdo it. So this is Dragonfly Skims the Water. Notice how you're using the supporting side of your body. And then just rest for a moment. We're going to come back to that in a moment. Just looking at this movement of the foot, hopefully you can see. I'll show you from the side for a moment. See here, I'm pulling the heel up and down, and I'll lower that, and then I pull the other heel up. My knee comes up, and the foot is nearly off the ground at this point. So then you raise the heel and the toes, you just flex the foot. Now there's one more stage you can add to this for Dragonfly Skims the Water. See how it feels, it's quite strong. You raise the foot and then you rotate the leg. And then back. So raise the heel and the toes, rotate, and back. You shouldn't do too many of these at once to begin with. Be careful of your back as well. And see if you can do this with turning. So turn towards one foot and raise. Only go as far as you're comfortable. If it's too much hard work to rotate, then don't do it. Just get this feeling that as you go forwards and turn, as you do this, it actually helps this movement. I mean, really exaggerating now, I'm showing my posture. I go back, I go forwards this way, and as I go forwards, so there's, not only does the center of the body move the arms for me, which it will do when we come back to the exercise, but it also connects to the legs. Remember, it connects to all parts of the body. So when we're doing a movement like dragonfly skims the water, or when, particularly the more complex movements, the key thing is to focus on what's happening in the center of the body and the connections out to feet and arms and hands and whatever, rather than thinking you've got to do one thing with your foot, another thing with your hand, and try and make them happen at the same time. Tai Chi, once again, is the whole body moving as one unit, and the wrong way to think about it is to think, well, if he's doing that with that hand, could I do that with this hand, and so on and so forth. It's not a question of being coordinated, because there's nothing to coordinate, because it's one movement. If it was more than one movement, you would have to coordinate them, to synchronize them, but it isn't. It's one movement, and that's where the center becomes important. So now let your hands drop to your sides, and just going into Wind Blows the Willows. And start to bring the lower part of your body into the movement. To whatever, just raising the heel is fine. Or if you want to try lifting the whole foot, good. To turn. But remember, it's quite a strong movement. I don't want you to overdo the movement. It's more important to feel the movement from the center of your body. It looks to me as though somebody was just turning your head. I'm not trying to turn my head. I'm turning the whole body. Turning your head is just going to give you neck ache. Good, and then lower the foot. Good. We'll come back to that in standing. So rubbing your hands together, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Your shoulders and your arms. The other side. Upper part of your chest. Your belly. And your legs. And then stand. So always use the chair for support as you need to. What I just mentioned there about not turning your head, but turning from the center of your body, actually, it's one of the key things that I see going wrong, particularly in the chair-based exercises. I see it in standing as well, but I think it's more difficult to get that sense of movement with the whole body in the chair-based exercises. It makes the chair-based exercises quite an advanced practice in many ways. It's a very common fault in Tai Chi, and I think it's because we're mostly very orientated towards the upper part of our body. It's almost like we lose a sense of what's happening in our feet and our legs and our hips and so on and so forth. And so when we turn, we tend to turn here. We tend to just sort of move from the chest, the shoulders, and the head. So there's a change in the way we relate to the body, a change in our minds that is the prelude to all Tai Chi. And a part of that change of perspective is a shift in your attention downwards. And that's something that we want to remind ourselves of constantly. This is very, very useful, by the way. I'm sure we've all had the experience of standing or sitting somewhere, and there's something you want to get behind you, so you do this, and then you go, and it hurts because you pulled a muscle. Whereas if you'd done this, you'd have been fine. Taken to its extreme, that can be quite serious, by the way. One of the common causes of people falling, particularly older people, and this, when I say common causes, there are 6 or 7 key factors. And one of the times when people fall, which is one of those factors, is when they turn quickly. So it's, something like, you're standing doing the washing up, the phone rings, you expect, oh, I better go and answer, and look at my posture. I'm already falling. Tai Chi would teach you to do this. I can stand like this for a long time, not the most comfortable of postures, but I'm not going to do myself any harm. This, I'm hurting my back already, and I'm still likely to fall over. So it's a common kind of saying in martial arts and self-defense that where the head goes, the body will follow. Because what happens is, if you need to get somebody out of your space, if you push on their head, there's no sort of strength there. They can't resist, so they'll 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 get pulled over. So there are some serious practical elements to this aspect of Tai Chi, moving from the center and that change in perspective. So first of all, rooting down, which is one of the reasons I use this exercise so much, is because of the emphasis on the root and the attention paid to the lower part of the body. Feel what's happening in the toes, the soles of your feet, your calves, your thighs, knees. And change to the wild goose. For the wild goose, your hands come down to a point roughly level with your hips, and then up again, roughly level with your shoulders. But now let your hands come all the way down, and again, feel the weight of your arms, push up and turn. It's your hips and your waist that are turning. So the angle of your head, if you like to think of it like that, the way that your head is pointing, is at 90 degrees to your chest. Let me come closer and show you what I mean. It's here. See, there. There's my chest. I come up. It's there. I'm not doing this. Turn my head further. And your arms are moving. Isn't that good? Your arms are doing what you want them to. Don't strain in your shoulders. Push your arms up. Use your legs to do that. Good. Remember, hands shouldn't come above shoulder height. Keep your heels on the ground. Don't come up into your toes. Keep the contact with the ground. Good. Now, put one foot forwards. Transferring your weight. Remember, just before you move the weight, the empty foot, you just gently push it into the ground. Just make sure there's a hole there or something like that. Which I hope there's not, because you're in your house. You'd be in trouble if there is. But and then raising your toes and your heel. Over the past couple of sessions, I've looked a little bit more at this idea of walking. In the chair, though, I drew your attention to the fact that when you turn your body, there's actually a connection that you can feel from that turn down into your feet. So I'm going to exaggerate. I go forwards, I turn, and as I do, that pulls my heel up. I go back and I turn, and that helps to pull my toes up. So we can make use of that connection between the center part of our body and the way it's turning to actually help us to move our feet. You've got to have the connection with the ground here, because if you start turning like this and you haven't really got that sense of sinking in to the ground, you're going to get quite unstable. So be careful with this. And then let's see if you can bring your foot in. And realize that I'm really exaggerating the turn. It's actually much more subtle than this. More like this, you barely notice it. Like a lot of ways of practicing in Tai Chi, if we do the movement quite big to begin with, we can begin to recognize the connections, and then we make them smaller. And then on the other side, so that you may even notice a little bit of a turn when you do this. Sometimes it's just there's a natural rotation there. And we don't always want to have that. If we were doing, say, fisherman cast a net, we wouldn't want that. But don't strain against it. Depends why it's happening. We can make it happen. We can allow it to happen, but we don't want to force it not to happen, because if it's a tightening in our leg or our hip that's causing the turning, which it could be, then we don't want to sort of strain against that. But then just get this sense of movement. And again, I'm exaggerating because it's almost like I'm pushing against something with my shoulder. And using that movement to help you just raise your toes and your heel. Step in. Then take a few steps, either forwards or backwards, depending on where you've got the space. Change direction. So, 1 foot forwards. I'm going to do this with my back to you, because we're going to go into Wind Blows the Willows and Dragonfly Skims the Water. Remember, it's really about where you're putting your attention. And your attention should be in the center of your body, and from there, down there into your feet, before you try and add on what's happening in the upper part of your body and your arms. So again, this idea of the body scan that I started off with is actually very useful for you as well, because it's training your attention. So have your left foot forwards. Start with fisherman cast a net. So here, there's no appreciable turning in the center of your body. But now as we go into the back foot, we turn to swing the arms out. Now be very careful as we develop this. If you're not comfortable sort of turning too far, if you're not comfortable raising your foot and so on and so forth, then don't do it. Give yourself time. Just stay with the basic movement and build that. You'll become more confident with it over time. So it's not a competition, remember. If you want to take it a bit further, as this is where you start to bring your heel and your toes up. And when we start to step in. Don't try and raise your leg yet, and practice that in the chair until you're comfortable with it. Okay. Then with the other foot forward, so we're doing patella. Okay. So start with fisherman castanet. Feel the weight of your arms, remember. And then turning. Wind blows the willows. Raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. And then again, if it's comfortable, bring your foot in, take a step forwards or backwards if something, turn range spaces. And change direction. And bring your feet parallel. And shake it. Good. Now go back to your chairs. So that last exercise is quite difficult, you may have noticed. I'm tempted to say it doesn't matter if you can't do it. I mean, obviously it does. You want to be able to do it, and you can try and build it up, but you have to ask yourself, what is the point of this? And one of the things I'm trying to emphasize, trying to get across to you, is this idea, and I've talked about it before, of drawing your thoughts in. This is where Tai Chi really works as a meditation. Our thoughts are often all over the place, and there's a lot going on for all of us at the moment, and that sense of being very scatty, I think, is actually quite a horrible state to be in. I've used this example of herding your thoughts like a sheepdog herding sheep to to a better place where the grass is greener, as it were. And in the same way, even if you can't do fisherman wind blows the willows, and so if you're getting confused, the effort that you make to keep your attention coming back to the center is still herding your thoughts into that quieter space, that more spacious area with a sense of stillness and quietness and so on and so forth. So this brings us, of course, to our closing movement: embrace tiger, return to the mountain. If I had to point my finger at one benefit from Tai Chi that in a way governs all the other benefits, is this ability to bring my attention back, to come back to a sense of being centered. So the more you wobble around and the more you lose what's going on in movements like wind blows the willows, dragonfly skims the water, the better, because that gives you more opportunity to practice this really essential quality of actually bringing your attention back. One of the interesting things I've noticed is that when I do some exercises that involve standing on one leg and so on and so forth, actually my success or failure at that is entirely governed by whether I can maintain a focus of attention on the foot that is supporting me and the feeling of that foot against the ground. I've actually experienced not stopping, wobbling, stopping myself falling over by learning to bring my attention back. I can't do it all the time because it's quite a difficult thing to do. So that makes this a really valuable asset, a really valuable skill. So embrace tiger, return to mountain. Once again, just let your attention rest on what for you is the sort of key element of this, or the key elements of this particular exercise. Is it the image of the mountain? Is it the sensation of dropping through your body? Or whatever else. One more time. And rest. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Take care of yourselves.
Yes, you too.
Yourself during these times, and I'll see you all very soon, I hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take care, all.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.